Greetings, everyone. Prepare to journey back to the heart of ancient Rome, to a pivotal night that could have reshaped history. What if the most powerful man in the world received a chilling warning just hours before his scheduled demise? The oil lamp flickered, casting a dancing, distorted shadow of Julius Caesar across the parchment-strewn table. A sudden, sharp rap at the chamber door shattered the late-night stillness, a sound too urgent for the hour. Caesar, his brow furrowed from the day's endless petitions and pronouncements, exhaled slowly. He had dismissed his personal guard, craving the solitude, a rare luxury in a life consumed by empire. The knock came again, more insistent, almost desperate. "Enter," he commanded, his voice a low rumble. The door creaked open, revealing not a legionnaire or a senator, but a young, trembling slave named Lyra, her eyes wide with terror, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She was one of Calpurnia's personal attendants, rarely seen beyond the Empress's private quarters. Her presence here, unbidden at this hour, was an anomaly that instantly prickled Caesar's senses. He sat straighter, the weariness momentarily forgotten. "My Lord Caesar," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "forgive my intrusion. I bring a warning, a grave warning." Her gaze darted around the opulent room, as if invisible daggers hung in the air. Caesar's eyes narrowed, his mind racing through the myriad threats that constantly orbited his existence. Rebellions in distant provinces, disgruntled senators, whispers of dissent in the forum. But Lyra's fear was too raw, too personal for a general political threat. "Speak plainly, girl," he urged, his tone firm but not unkind. "What warning do you carry that steals your breath so?" Lyra clutched her simple tunic, her knuckles white. "Tomorrow, Lord. In the Senate. They mean to strike you down. Brutus, Cassius, many others." The words hung in the air, heavy and cold as marble. Caesar felt a sudden, visceral jolt, as if struck by an unseen fist. Not a distant enemy, but those he had pardoned, elevated, called friends. The betrayal was a bitter taste, sharper than any battle wound. His mind, accustomed to processing strategies of war, now grappled with the insidious architecture of treachery. The silence in the room was deafening, broken only by the frantic beat of Lyra's heart and the distant hoot of an owl. The Ides of March, a date he had marked for triumph, now loomed as a precipice. Caesar rose, his movements deliberate, his gaze fixed on nothing in particular, yet seeing everything. The faces of those men, their feigned deference, their hidden contempt. Brutus, his adopted son, his confidant. Cassius, whose lean and hungry look he had always distrusted yet tolerated. The sheer audacity of it, the cold, calculated malice. His first instinct was a warrior's rage, a desire to crush them immediately, to unleash the full might of his authority. But then, a deeper, colder thought took hold. To react with brute force was to confirm their accusations of tyranny. He needed more than vengeance. He needed to dismantle their conspiracy, to expose their treachery, and to ensure Rome's stability. Lyra, still trembling, watched him, unsure she had delivered salvation or sealed her own doom. Caesar finally turned to her, his expression unreadable. "You have done well, Lyra. Your courage shall not be forgotten." He knew this was not merely a warning. It was a declaration of war, not on a battlefield, but in the very heart of Rome, a war for his life, his legacy, and the future of the Republic. The night had just begun. The first rays of dawn pierced through the heavy curtains of Caesar's villa, illuminating a scene of quiet, intense activity. Mark Antony, summoned in the dead of night, stood beside Caesar, his usual boisterous demeanor replaced by a grim resolve. His face, normally quick to laughter, was set like stone. Lyra, having repeated her account under Antony's sharp questioning, now rested in a guarded room, exhausted but safe. "Brutus," Antony muttered, the name a curse. "I never trusted his quiet piety, always too eager to speak of republic while coveting your power." Caesar, however, remained outwardly calm, his mind already several steps ahead. "Their motivations are irrelevant now, Antony. Only their methods and our response matter." He paced the room, a predator calculating its strike. "They will expect me to attend the Senate, to appear unsuspecting. That is their advantage. It must become ours. But not as they imagine." A flicker of a dangerous smile touched Caesar's lips. "We shall give them their victim, Antony, but not the one they seek." Antony's eyes widened, a slow understanding dawning. "A double? My lord, it is a perilous gamble." "All of life is a gamble, Antony," Caesar retorted, his voice low and firm. "But this gamble, if played correctly, will not only save my life, but expose their black hearts to all of Rome. They wish to be hailed as liberators? They shall be branded as murderers." He dispatched trusted messengers, not to gather legions, but to discreetly position loyal centurions among the populace, disguised as ordinary citizens. Their task was not to fight, but to guide the swelling crowds, to ensure the right ears heard the right words at the opportune moment. Next, he summoned Decimus, a close friend and a man known for his cunning, and a man whose physical stature bore a striking, if not perfect, resemblance to Caesar himself. Decimus arrived, his face etched with concern. "My lord, I heard whispers of your early rising. Is all well?" Caesar fixed him with an unwavering gaze. "Decimus, Rome needs a sacrifice today. A false one to reveal a true evil. Are you willing to play a part in a drama that will shake the foundations of our city? Decimus, understanding the gravity, nodded without hesitation. My life is yours, Caesar. Caesar then laid out his audacious plan. Decimus, dressed in Caesar's finest toga, would enter the Senate, feigning the slight illness that the rumors had already begun to spread. He would take Caesar's seat. Antony would be nearby, his usual boisterous self drawing attention, but with a silent signal ready. Meanwhile, the true Caesar, in humble garb, would slip out of the villa and mingle with the common people in the Forum, a place where the pulse of Rome truly beat. As the morning progressed, the rumor of Caesar's slight indisposition spread like wildfire. Senators arriving at the Curia Pompeia exchanged worried glances. Had Caesar truly fallen ill? Would the session be postponed? The conspirators, hidden amongst them, felt a cold dread. Their perfect opportunity, the carefully chosen location, the element of surprise, all hinged on Caesar's attendance. Cassius, his face a mask of barely contained fury, approached Brutus. This cannot be. He must come. All is prepared. Brutus, his internal conflict evident in his troubled eyes, nodded grimly. We must ensure his presence. It is the only way. Soon after, a delegation arrived at Caesar's villa, led by Decimus himself, playing his part perfectly. My lord, Decimus began, his voice feigning concern, the Senate awaits your wisdom. There are matters of great urgency. We heard you were unwell. We pray it is not so. Caesar, feigning weakness, leaned heavily on Antony. Indeed, Decimus, a sudden chill. Perhaps I should rest. Another conspirator, Trebonius, stepped forward, his voice dripping with false concern. Rome needs you, Caesar. Important decrees await your signature. The people yearn for your presence. Caesar observed their eagerness, their thinly veiled desperation. He saw the hunger in their eyes, the anticipation of their dark deed. He allowed a moment of silence, letting their anxiety fester. Then, with a practiced sigh, he straightened. Very well, for Rome I shall endure. Prepare my litter, I will attend. A collective sigh of relief, almost imperceptible, rippled through the delegation. They believed their deception had worked. They believed they had lured him to his doom. The journey to the Senate was a slow, deliberate procession. Decimus, carefully made up to resemble Caesar, lay on the litter, his face obscured by the shadows of the canopy, feigning a slight fever. Antony walked beside him, his gaze sharp, noting the conspirators who watched the procession with predatory eagerness. Meanwhile, the true Caesar, cloaked and hooded, moved through the bustling streets towards the Forum. He was just another face in the crowd, yet his mind raced, observing, calculating. He knew the Roman people. They were fickle, easily swayed, but deeply loyal to those who truly championed them. He found a raised platform near the rostra, where speakers often addressed the populace. A small crowd, drawn by the unusual activity and the whispers of the Ides, began to gather. Inside the Curia Pompeia, the air was thick with anticipation. Senators milled about, some discussing trivial matters, others exchanging furtive glances. The conspirators were strategically positioned, their daggers concealed beneath their togas, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and fanaticism. Brutus, his face pale, stood near the statue of Pompey, his gaze fixed on the entrance. He believed he was acting for Rome, for a lost republic, a ghost of a dream that haunted his noble mind. Then, the murmurs began. He comes. The grand doors of the Curia Pompeia swung open with a slow, ominous creak. Decimus, walking with a slight, deliberate stiffness, entered, his face partially obscured by the shadows of his toga, mimicking Caesar's feigned indisposition. Antony followed closely, his hand subtly resting on the hilt of his gladius. The conspirators exchanged quick, triumphant glances. Their prey had arrived. Decimus moved towards the golden chair. As he reached it, Cimber stepped forward, his voice trembling with feigned urgency. My lord Caesar, I implore you, reconsider my brother's exile. As Cimber grasped Decimus's toga, the signal was given. Casca, positioned behind the chair, plunged his dagger into Decimus's neck. A gasp of horror erupted from the innocent senators. Then, a frenzy. Daggers flashed, a blur of steel and crimson. Brutus, his face a mask of grim resolve, plunged his own blade into the falling figure. Decimus, with a final, choked cry, collapsed, his. Blood staining the marble floor, a macabre tableau of betrayal. The conspirators stood over the fallen body, panting, their daggers dripping, their faces a mixture of exhilaration and terror. Tyrant is dead, Rome is free, they cried, their voices hoarse with triumph. At that very moment, in the bustling forum, a lone figure, cloaked and hooded, ascended the makeshift platform. The crowd, drawn by his commanding presence, quieted. Citizens of Rome. Caesar's voice boomed, amplified by the natural acoustics of the forum, carrying a raw, urgent power. Today, the Ides of March was to be a day of betrayal, a day when the very heart of Rome was to be pierced by the daggers of those you trust. A ripple of confusion, then alarm, went through the crowd. What speaks this man? Someone shouted. Caesar threw back his hood, revealing his unmistakable, formidable face. A collective gasp of recognition swept through the forum, followed by a roar of disbelief. Caesar, it is Caesar, yes, it is I, he thundered, his voice filled with righteous fury. And I stand before you not as a victim, but as a witness, for even now in the Curia Pompeia a vile act of treachery unfolds. Men, whom I called friends, whom I pardoned and elevated, believe they have murdered me. They believe they have struck down Rome's protector, all for their own ambition, cloaked in the false guise of liberty. The crowd surged forward, their faces contorted with anger and confusion. Murderers, who are they? Watch, Caesar commanded, pointing dramatically towards the Curia Pompeia. Watch, and see their faces, see their daggers, still wet with innocent blood. They will emerge, believing their dark deed done, expecting your cheers. But you, the true heart of Rome, will show them the face of justice. Just then, the grand doors of the Curia Pompeia burst open. The conspirators, flushed with their perceived victory, emerged into the brilliant sunlight, their daggers held aloft, their togas stained with blood. Brutus, Cassius, Cimber, Casca, their faces triumphant, their eyes scanning the crowd for adulation. Rome is free, they cried, their voices echoing across the forum. But instead of cheers, a guttural roar erupted from the thousands gathered. Traitors, murderers. The sound was deafening, a wave of collective outrage. The conspirators faltered, their triumphant smiles freezing on their faces. Their eyes, wide with confusion, searched for the source of the fury, and then they saw him. Standing on the platform, alive, formidable, his face etched with sorrow and cold resolve, was Julius Caesar, the real Caesar. The sight struck them like a physical blow. Their faces drained of all color, their daggers clattered to the ground. The crowd surged, a living tide of fury. He lives, Caesar lives, death to the traitors. Antony, who had slipped out of the Senate amidst the chaos, now stood beside Caesar, his gladius drawn. Loyal centurions, previously hidden, now moved to secure the stunned conspirators. The people, enraged by the public unveiling of such perfidy, surged forward, their hands reaching, their voices a thunderous condemnation. The conspirators, who had planned a glorious martyrdom, found themselves facing the wrath of an entire city. They were seized, disarmed, and dragged away amidst a storm of curses and accusations. Brutus, his eyes still fixed on Caesar, whispered, "It was a phantom," before he was swallowed by the crowd. Caesar stood tall, surveying the scene. The blood on the Senate floor was not his own, but the stain of betrayal was now irrevocably marked on his enemies. He had faced his assassins, not with a shield and sword, but with cunning and the unyielding power of truth. He had not only survived, but had turned their darkest hour into his greatest triumph, winning the hearts of the Roman people in a way no military victory ever could. The Ides of March, once a day of dread, became the day of his undeniable ascendancy, a testament to his foresight and an enduring symbol of his indomitable will. The empire, under his watchful eye, would now march forward, its path forever altered by the night of the unforeseen warning and the morning of the spectacular reveal. This story of survival and strategic brilliance, of loyalty tested and betrayal unmasked, reminds us that even the most certain fates can be altered by a single whisper of truth. The course of history sometimes hangs by the slenderest thread. If this tale resonated with you, consider liking, sharing, and subscribing for more journeys into the untold.